Welcome back, everyone, to the Microsoft Sentinel in the Field series. Hope this message finds you well. Javier, we got a very special guest and a very important topic. How you doing?
Absolutely. Hello, Chris, and hello, everyone. So today we have a new guest to talk about Microsoft Defender for Threat Intelligence, which we always call MDTI internally at Microsoft. And we're going to talk, obviously, about integrations with Sentinel. And for that, we have our friend Sean Wesonga from the MDTI engineering team. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks, Javier. Thanks, Chris. I've been dying to get on your show. It's very exciting. I always see great collaborations, great knowledge. And yeah, today I'm here to talk about Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence. And I am from the engineering team. And, glad to tell the folks about what it is and
Sean,
what it does.
Talk to me. What is Defender for TI? How can customers leverage it?
All right, I think great question. I think it's always good to provide some context. From a historical view, this was a solution that was purchased by Microsoft through a company known as RiskIQ. Now, by definition, Defender Threat Intelligence is that. It's a threat intelligence solution that helps provide our customers, our partners, with information in terms of how they're able to get a full 360-degree view of their threat exposure. How do we do this? Through a couple of things. One, we identify adversaries and their malicious infrastructure at a global stage. Two, we accelerate remediation and internet threat intelligence, helping you uncover multiple exposures and helping you remove attackers and reduce the risk of double extortion. Last but not least, and which I'm particularly happy about, is the integration piece, right? We're able to integrate with existing security infrastructure and enhance the prevention and improve the overall posture. And that's what Defender for Threat Intelligence is.
Fantastic, Sean. Thanks a lot for the really context. Why don't we go ahead and start a little demo? Can you show us in the screen, the basics of Defender for Threat Intelligence, and then we'll talk obviously about the different integration points that we have with Sentinel. Is that okay?
Definitely, and I'm glad to show that. So I'll just proceed to share my screen. All right, so here we are on the MDTI portal, also known as the MDTI Workbench. And one thing that I forgot to mention earlier is the fact that with MDTI, we produce two key things: raw intelligence and also finished intelligence. What you can actually see here are what is captured within the finished intelligence. And this is in form of articles. Now, these articles give you visibility of different threats, their threat actors, and also gives you information in terms of the indicators that are also found within these defined threats that we have identified. The articles are actually created by Microsoft security teams. If you've heard of our Mystic teams, Section 52 from an IoT side, and also threat intelligence from RiskIQ, we curate all this data and create information in relation towards different threats. So just to show you what we capture within these articles, I'm going to select this specific article. In this case, we get a definition, Mercury and Dev 1084. It's a destructive attack on a hybrid environment. You get tags in relation towards this article, but most importantly, you get a description that outlines what this specific threat actually is, references if there are any defined mitigations and recommendations, you'd find it there. But most importantly, and this is where Defender for Threat Intelligence comes into play, is we give you the actual indicators of compromise that you can proactively use to protect your environment, right? So you can actually see here, we have a couple of URLs. We have gone through it, our different security teams, our research teams, and we have identified them as actual threats. And we actually outweighing them to you as a customer, and you can use it to proactively investigate, do your threat hunting, and even your proactive detection. In this case, we see a couple of URLs, we see a couple of domains, and we also see a couple of hashes. And these are all indicators of compromise that we have actually identified as potential threats. We give you visibility of what's publicly available and what our research teams have actually identified, right? And that's where you'll actually see on the Defender TI indicators. Now, just to give you visibility in terms of what we provide to you, I'll click on towards this domain as part of the indicators of compromise, right? So if I click on towards vetacloud.com, what you're able to see is what's known as the threat intelligence of this specific domain. You get a great summary just highlighting why we think this specific domain is malicious. And this is through a motion which we call as reputational scoring. In this case, we have scored it at 100 and we tell you why. One, we found it in this article. It's part of known Microsoft block lists. The resolving IP address is exhibiting suspicious behavior, as well as the name server as well. You also get analyst insights, and this can actually be used by our customers for overall investigation process, right? As you can actually see, in this case, when was it last seen? What is it actually registered to? The registrant. But you're also getting analyst insights. There's a new subdomain that was opened 5 months ago. If there are any defined Intel profiles in relation towards that, and I'll talk briefly about that, you'll be able to see that. But more importantly, what we are doing is giving you the underlying data that can determine whether or not an IOC is malicious, suspicious, or not. Just to give you other information in terms of what we provide as well, is we're also able to go in and provide more details. In this case, it's a domain. We're able to tell you what it's resolving to, the records in terms of who it's actually registered to, if there are any certificates, trackers, components, basically the underlying infrastructure that's actually hosting, for example, VetaCloud.com. You're able to essentially get that information. In this case, we see it's a hosting provider, and you can actually see what it actually entails. The DNS information, amongst other information as well. And this is some of the clear benefits that you get with MDTI, and you're able to use it for your proactive detection as well. One thing I'd like to highlight before I push it back to you, Chris and Javier, is we have another motion known as Intel Profiles. Now, this functionality is quite great, right? Because it's us giving visibility towards our customers and partners on common threat actors and also defined tooling. So, for example, on these threat actors, we have commonly known threat actors such as actinium, americium, barium. And what we're able to give you into this information is, for example, if I click into actinium, I get a great description in terms of what this threat actor actually is. I get the TTPs in terms of what's actually involved in it, right? So the tactics, the procedures, etc. And I'm able to get that information aligned with this threat actor. I am also able to see the country or region it's actually originating from, and also the targeted industries. But most importantly, and what comes within Defender Threat Intelligence, is the indicators of compromise that are in line with this threat actor group, right? So I'm able to take all this information, put it in towards my other security infrastructure solutions, either for proactive detection, maybe I'm using it for hunting on Sentinel, amongst other scenarios as well. Detection in terms of capturing that, it's really up to you. Not only do we have threat actors, but we also have tooling you can use. Some of our customers are constantly using red team penetration testing tools. A common one is known as Cobalt Strike. I'm sure you've heard of that one. And we're able to also get those indicators and actually use them to proactively identify different threats within. So as you can actually see, this is the one I was talking about. You can use that to identify if there are any potential tools that are being used in your environment and proactively detect it as well. But this is some of the great features that actually come with MDTI, amongst others as well.
So Sean, this is really good. Why? Because it gives our customers the ability to focus on the mean time to acknowledge and mean time to respond. I do know that's a big scope part of the engineering team. Can you talk about that and how that relates into Microsoft Sentinel and how customers can use the TI feeds and all this great context back into their SIM, which is Sentinel?
Great question, Chris. And in fact, the reason I'm so excited is on the 28th of March, we actually announced our integration play with Sentinel. And what did we announce? We announced a new data connector. We announced a new threat intelligence analytics rule. And on top of that, we released some playbooks. Now, how does this go in line with MTTI and MTTR, right? One of the key aspects in terms of investigation, specifically with Sentinel, is you're trying to determine whether this host or IP or URL is actually malicious, right? Now that investigation process might entail going towards different data sets, running it across different areas, determining whether it's malicious or not. With MDTI and that defined integration, we're able to tell you, for example, leveraging with the playbooks, that immediately this is malicious, immediately this is suspicious. We can give you the underlying infrastructure. It's being used by this Intel profile and this threat actor. On top of that, with our data connector, we allow you to pull in all these indicators that I've shown you in towards Sentinel, and you can use it proactively to detect it against different threats. So if you're using the TI mapping rule, right, whether it's against common events and logs within your environment, you can determine whether or not if something is a known threat or no. On top of that, we have the intelligence analytics rule that leverages black box TI detection and basically detects threats in the back end. And once there's a match, it basically pushes that threat intelligence indicator into the threat intelligence blade and also creates an incident. So quite a number of things in terms of what you have created, and I'll also be interested to show you how it works.
Yes, please, Sean. Let's take a look at the connector itself. And I guess one follow-up question would be, when I use that connector in Sentinel, does it bring all the IOCs that we just saw in the MDTI portal?
Yes, so good question. If you use the indicator, it will import all the IOCs into the threat intelligence blade. All right, so that's the first question I'd like to announce to you. And now if you think about the different IOCs that we have, if you could remember what I talked about earlier, we have the public indicators, and we also have the Defender TI indicators that are actually created by our team. Both of those are brought in, and you can actually use them against matching across your environment as well. So it's quite, the beauty about this is it's free of charge. It comes at no extra cost towards our customer. But these are one of the beautiful things within our solutions. But let's get straight to the data connector. Now, to go to the data connector, it's very simple. All you need to do is look for Defender Threat Intelligence. And once you locate it on the data connector page, click on Open the connector page, and you'll be actually presented with a couple of options in terms of what you need to import. Now, we're very cognizant of the fact that importing all these indicators might have an element in terms of ingestion charges. So it's really up to you in terms of what you'd like to connect. But just to give you visibility as a customer, we give you these options. You can import indicators that are 1 day old, 1 week old, or 1 month old, or all that are actually available. So it's really up to you in terms of what you'd essentially want to do. On top of that, we also tell you some of the recommended logging sources for this defined IOCs that we are matching across. And if I zoom in a bit, you'd actually see we have AWS, Azure Active Directory, Azure Firewall, DNS, Office 365, etc. Right? And leveraging the TI mapping analytical rules, you can actually use it to map against some of those sources as well. These indicators, when you import them, they go to the threat intelligence plate and the threat intelligence indicator table. And that's what you can actually see here as well. Okay. Any questions on the data connector, Javier?
No, that looks great. I mean, the value that we're bringing to customers for free, just being able to import all those indicators that come from Defender for TI is quite huge.
So Sean, one of the biggest questions that customers ask is that after we bring that data, the TI feeds it into Sentinel, we have many different ways to actually bring it in. What does Sentinel do after that? What's the value out of the box that we actually provide customers for that?
I think great question, right? And I think this falls under the statement that collection is not detection, right? Like, it's one thing to collect these indicators. It's one thing to have it detect against what's running within your environment, right? Now, here we have two key elements. Now, I did mention that we have an analytic rule that we did announce. And just to show you how it works, I'm just going to proceed to show you about that threat intelligence analytic rule, right? Now, this is what is known as black box TI detection, meaning it will detect based off of the logs and events that you have and the IOCs that we have. It will run in the background and provide that detection against the IOCs if they see there's a match of those IOCs within your data. Now, the sources that we're using with this threat intelligence analytic rules are Ceph, your DNS, your syslog, and Office activity and Azure activity. And the beauty about leveraging this specific analytic rule is it doesn't require any configuration in terms of customization. All that you're required to do is create the rule, as you can actually see here. And once it loads, all you need to do is just complete it, and it will basically run that black box detection in the backend. Now, what does this mean? Every time there's a match, it will create an incident of high severity, and you'll see that on the incident view, right? So this is what I mentioned. Click on review and create, click on save, and that's all that's required. You don't have to customize, boom, boom, boom. It's easily done in the backend. We also like to talk about this because some of our customers are very conscious of the ingestion charges, and unlike the data connector, which brings in all the indicators, with the threat intelligence analytic rule, it will only bring in the indicator it matches against into the threat intelligence plate and also the threat intelligence table. So it's really dependent on what the customer would like to do, but this is such another way in terms of how you can run detections in the backend. Now, that was the first thing. The second thing is commonly used with the TI mapping rules. Now, I'm sure you are aware that within Sentinel, we have quite a number of TI mapping rules out of the box within Sentinel that you can essentially leverage. As you can actually see, these are quite a number of them. And the reason why I'd like to mention this is with the data connector, we are pushing everything to the threat intelligence table, right? And you can basically use that to map against these different TI mapping analytic rules that we have created. So it's really up to you in terms of, as a customer, in terms of how you'd like to use it. But essentially, once everything is put towards the threat intelligence indicator table, you can easily run detections against that. Okay.
Very cool. Sean, can you show us a little bit about the playbooks that you mentioned? I think we introduced 3 new playbooks on the 28th. Is that right?
This is correct. We introduced 3 playbooks and more are coming in the very near future. Now, the beauty about this is, first I need to mention, to use these playbooks, you will need to have access towards the API because they do run against the API. To access towards these playbooks, it's very simple. We've created them as part of a Content Hub solution. All you'll need to do is go towards the Content Hub page, look for Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence, and it should provide those playbooks to allow you to essentially install. So I'm just going to show you how that looks like. Going towards the Content Hub, looking for Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence, and you'll actually see them there. And all you'll need to do is just install them, and you should have access towards these. We'll actually deploy 4 playbooks. One is the base playbook that allows you to authenticate access specifically towards the API. We have a blog that I believe we can share that guides our customers in terms of how they can use that. Then we have 3 other playbooks. One is for reputational scoring. Another one is an automated triage. And the last one is to give you visibility of your web components. But I'd rather show you how they work. And to do that, I'll go towards the incidents page, where I've created a couple of incidents. And in this specific case, I'm interested in MDI test rule. Going to go into the view details page. And as it loads, just to give you visibility of these defined playbooks, as I mentioned, we have Intel reputation, which will give you a reputational scoring for the IOCs of the different entities that we have within the incident. We have an automated triage that will determine if you have any high severity IOC, it will basically automatically increase the incident towards a high severity, and last but not least, we have data web components that will show you the underlying infrastructure. So this is the incident. We have all these entities, as you can actually see here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in towards the incident actions and run the playbooks. Of course, it's really up to you in terms of how you'd like to use this. If you've created an automation rule, I think that's the most ideal approach, right? Like create an automation rule every time you set up an analytics rule, but just for demo purposes, I will go towards incident actions and click on the run playbook. All right, so in this specific case, all I'll need to do is look for my playbooks. These are the 3 playbooks I mentioned. We have the automated triage, data web components, and Intel reputation. All I'm going to do is I'm going to run each of them. And once they're triggered successfully, I will move over towards the activity logs, and you should be able to see the outcome of these playbooks in relation towards what I mentioned. So this is the MDTI data web components, and you can actually see it's identified the entity, which is 185.82.217.3, and the web components playbook is giving us the underlying infrastructure of this specific IP. What I'm interested, and the reason why this is important specifically for our customers, is you're able to see the underlying infrastructure and use it for your proactive investigation processes across other scenarios as well. I'm interested in this case because I'm seeing a command and control server, and it's part of Cobalt Strike. So remember we talked about tooling, right? Mm-hmm. Cobalt Strike, this is a red team penetration testing solution, and we can see this is part of that infrastructure, and we can use this to proactively block it, or even send it towards potential hunting scenarios as well. Another thing that you'll be able to capture as well, I'll just go towards the new activity logs that have been generated. All right, so we're going towards the next playbook, and this one is the MDTI automated triage. Now, remember, we talked about this one. What it does is, depending if it finds any of those IOCs are malicious, what it does is it changes the incident severity to high, it changes the status to active, and it also provides tagging towards the incident as well. And you can actually see that has been captured as well, right? Last but not least, we have the last one, which is Intel reputation. In this case, we have this host, AnyDeskOfferBlackFriday.com. We run it against our Intel reputational endpoint, and it classified it as malicious. But not only did it do that, it gave us underlying information as well in regards to threat intelligence. In this case, we have the article. We can actually see the register is also exhibiting suspicious behavior, and also the name server. So you can actually use this as part of your MTTA, MTTR sort of process, right? If I'm a SOC analyst, I run these playbooks, I get this response, I immediately know what I need to do in terms of the next steps, whether it's, blocking that traffic from those entities, whether it's, isolating the users that are actually involved, or any other defined scenarios. It's really up to you. What MDTI gives is more information in terms of helping you get those decisions quite fast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. Sean, I think that there was also a workbook that you developed. Can you show us a little bit of what that does and what it can provide to customers?
Yes. So this is, quite happy about this one because it will soon be on our GitHub page, accessible towards our customers. And what this workbook does is it helps you consolidate a defined story for you as a customer when leveraging MDTI threat intelligence. Now, different views in terms of what we have. We have an integration within Sentinel. And in this case, once you bring in the connectors, if you have any alerts in relation to threat intelligence, it gives you that one-stop view as well. In this case, the intelligence IPs that have been brought in, we sort of had the geographical view as well because there are quite a number of indicators. If there are any alerts within MDTI, you can actually see that as well. We are also a bit creative because we also worked with, we know the behavior analytics anomaly table. When we see any specific IPs, we are running them against our reputational scoring and giving you that specific view. So any behavior analytics IP that's found, we run them against our reputational scoring and gives you that view as well. We have incident trigger analytics based off of the rule that we have created, amongst others as well. We were also a bit creative, and where we used the data that we get from user entity behavior analytics, and we use the information. For example, if you have an IP that has been captured within UEBA, we run it against the MDTI reputational scoring and also provided that information as well, right? So in this case, we're getting those IPs, we can do a classification, we can tell you the destination device, and if you want to drill down deeper into what's the IP, you can essentially do that as well. We're also giving you, if there are any incidents that have been triggered by the analytical rule, you can see that information, the uniqueness of the threat intelligence sources, and the threat indicators that have been pulled as well. On top of that, we wanted our customers having the ability to consolidate all the information that we have within MDTI on one specific page. And to do that, we created IP address information tab. And what it does is, as a user, I'll just need to search an IP address, and it should be able to tell me, is the IP malicious? Where is it located? What are the underlying components? The overall information, if it has any threat intelligence details, and if there are any host or trackers. In this case, we have this IP address. It gives us a suspicious scoring. It tells us it's based out of the United States. It tells us why it's suspicious, as you can actually see here. The address information, if it has any cookies, if it has any trackers. So you can also see the components information as well. So you can know and see, is this IP, what's the underlying infrastructure, and you can use it across the board as well, right? So it's really up to you in terms of how creative you'd want to use data. And most importantly, we also gave you the ability to search that IOC against historical data that you actually have within. One-stop view, basically capture everything across your environment. We did that also for your hostname information, but what I wanted to show are the other elements as well. We talked about the articles, and if you would like to get, for example, what's a specific article, the IOCs that are in relation towards it, you can actually do that by easily searching against the article IDs that we have, as you can actually see here as well. Vulnerabilities is also important towards us. This is information that's provided within MDTI. You can search a specific CVE, generate the tags that are in line with it, the overall detail, if it's a priority scoring, if it's malicious, and identify articles in relation towards a vulnerability, and also the components that are actually being impacted by this specific vulnerability. For example, this specific CVE. So just putting it into there gives you all that information that you need to basically capture for your proactive detections, threat hunting, etc. Last but not least, we brought in the Intel profiles information. So the threat actors and tooling, all you need to do is search them by profile ID. Once you search, it will give you the actor name, the aliases that it's being used, the targeted, the sponsor states, the indicators that are being involved. In this case, we see a couple of hashes that you can actually use that as well. And on top of that, if you want to go towards the profile list, in this case, I've been working with a couple of interesting customers around the industry, around health. All I'll need to do is search health, and it will tell me all the articles that are in line with health sort of industry. So you can use this, identify the indicators of compromise, and use that proactively, either push them towards your detection processes or your hunting processes across the board as well. Yes, and this is a workbook that will be published towards our GitHub to be used by our customers. The only caveat is you will need a premium license, and an API license to use it as well. But we also have 90-day trials in case our customers wants to test those out as well. Yeah.
Perfect, Sean. Thank you so much for bringing all this information about Microsoft Defender for Threat Intelligence. It was super, super helpful to see what all the value that can bring with the connector, with the analytic rule, with the playbooks, and with the workbook. Thanks a lot, Sean. See you next time.
Thank you all.
Great. Thanks.